Awesome. So as we said in our email, if there's any participants who would like to share a seed concept or talk about some of their process work, you're welcome to take the time now. Absolutely no pressure. So if anybody, does anybody want to share work they've been doing or things they've been thinking about?
And for context for the GNL participants, we have been sharing the last couple of reading sessions, our own process work. So if no one has anything new, that's totally cool.
Mm-hmm.
I think I can share my.
Yay, I'm so excited. And Andrew, I saw your hand go up. So if you want to share after, that would be great.
Awesome.
And John, woo!
Yay.
Okay, so I'm just going to make sure you can share your screen.
Yeah. Let me see. Oh, I can't.
Sorry, one sec.
One sec.
Enabling it.
Seven participants, and then, or like click the arrow up. Oh, shoot. Ian, help. How do we
We've done this before, I swear.
So if you, down by the share screen, is there a little caret and you can do allow multiple people to share?
We did it.
Okay.
Can you see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So I'm doing the all is tainted glory. I think it's interesting story because I think the writer hopes to make a difference to climate change by getting children to do so through love and imagination. And she used the cup throwing scene from the Fifth Element to show her thoughts. And my concept is to set a show in a box. Maybe possibly the venue is museum or a science gallery, and the box is made up of canvases. When in the story, when the Rebecca hits the cup against the wall, maybe the drink possibly is red. And it can sting the canvas, and the light changes the entire wall to red. I think this is not only a symbol of breaking the traditional education model, but the world outside the box, just in a museum, like is what we want children to see. And after the performance, I think the children can be invited to paint on the canvas, so that these two big picture frames can become artworks. And this is my sketch. And this is my model. And for the materials, I think all the furniture and picture frames are the recycled box. While the canvas, I used the sterilized and sewing from the internal fabrics of disposable face masks. Because due to the pandemic, I think there are too many medical waste. I don't. This is just a concept because I think if we pay more attention on it, like everyone know how to deal with our face masks, and I think we can just handle it to be artwork. I think because there is a sentence in the fifth element is that everything people created is used to destroy. I think it's a interesting sentence because everyone we like disposal face masks is also like we need to destroy it in the end, and they will be burned and or flow into the sea. It's really a big harm to our environment and the climate. So I'm thinking we we don't know our face mask have whether our face mask has the virus or not. And I think after like 1 month, it's totally don't have any virus. And if we use like boiling water, maybe we can just make it to be a clean one, and then make it to be an artwork. So this is my concept. And this is just the model, and maybe the cups can throw on the wall, and maybe like this, use some lighting to make it. Okay. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is such a huge waste stream that you are proposing tackling, and like medical waste, and the fact that there are measurable ways to sanitize these things, but there's no system in place currently for recycling them or harnessing that waste stream. I think that's really cool, and I love that you're inviting children to create artwork through that experience too.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's particularly interesting to imagine kids sort of coming out of the pandemic as leaders and sort of change makers. And I think that's what's really interesting about your material choice and your extension of the play into an afterwards workshop. I think that's really exciting. Yeah, I love the proposal of also doing it in a museum or a cultural center or a science center. I think that's really exciting. And I wonder how you could connect the themes in the play to some sort of exhibit or educational programming in one of those centers. That could be really exciting.
Thank you.
Awesome. If no one else wants to comment, then why don't we move on to Sarah, please jump in.
Can I ask you one question? As I was seeing that, it was so exciting and so like engaging. What is your hope or intention with the artwork after the students paint on it? What will happen with it after the performance?
I think they can use some different colors to paint it, and then I think this artworks can be like can present to a lot of people, like in the gallery or some place, and this can also be part of the performance that lets audience to pay attention to this stuff and the climate change. Yeah, thank you.
I was just going to say, I really enjoyed the presentation. I love how you're thinking about the circularity of your design and, you know, extending the materials in a really innovative and celebratory way. And it's a simple concept, but I think it's really strong, which is really nice. That doesn't have to be this big grand gesture. It's actually quite a gentle gesture that says a lot. And I quite like how you're bringing big issues together, like the pandemic, plastic pollution and waste and things like that. And the connection to children, I think, makes sense. So conceptually, that is well integrated throughout. So, and I don't know the play, but through what you just summarized and your design, I can see that working really, really well.
Thank you.
Does it say anywhere in the play where the title comes from? Because I know that quote, and I wasn't sure because I haven't read it. It's the whole sentence is, "It takes great courage to see the world in all its tainted glory and still to love it." And I think that's probably in the play, is it? Anyway, that's something, a lesson that I've written in all my Christmas cards this year because I think it's so important. So thank you. I think it was a great presentation. Really interesting. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's really amazing to imagine that both the pandemic and climate change both need that quote that Astrid just pulled out of the title. Oh. And kids tend to contain that, you know, just in who they are. So to have them kind of encourage other generations to see the world through that lens, through your canvases, is really, really provocative. So thank you so much for that. Andrew, if you want to take it away, we'd love to see your work.
Yeah, I'd love to. Share my screen. Can everybody see it? Okay, perfect. So one of the seed concepts I did was for the pageant, which was about 3 Gaias who are preparing for like their annual celebration to remember when they've achieved the Green New Deal and how they're now like a sustainable planet and they're like operating like zero waste and highly sustainable. And it's just them talking about if they should be doing the presentation how they normally do it, where they talk about like unicorn tears and it's this very like fantasy based story, or if they should go like tell the truth about how the elders, who are the people who kind of achieved the New Deal and got them where they are now. So for this, I wanted to do a costume design. And when we were first reading it, I was kind of thinking of like, because it's in the future, my head kind of went to like Star Wars, like those Jedi robes. So I wanted to do something with that kind of image, but I wanted to do it with like a natural textile. So what I did for my seed concept was some natural dyeing. So I had some cotton canvas that was like some offcuts from other projects I worked on. So I made, I forged some black walnuts from my grandmother's backyard, and I kind of made a dye bath for them. So the idea would be that there would be all natural like cotton robes with different dyes, and they'd be different shades to kind of show. To me, they seemed like one was older and some were more younger because they were more stubborn about certain things. So the older ones would have the darker robes and the younger ones would have more subtle, pale kind of textures. So that's kind of what I did here. And then the kind of higher up they would have more stripes on them. So they're all kind of tied in together, but all with the same textile. And then I have, and this is my kind of natural dye work. So those are the black walnuts. And then there's the 3 different kind of samples. So I did different timings on each of them to kind of get a darker tone, but it kind of didn't read that well. They're kind of too similar for my liking. But yeah, so that's kind of what I did there. And then I kind of have them here. I can just show them. Yeah. So that's that concept. Should I just move on to my next one?
I mean, can we give you an applause first?
Sure. Thank you.
I think it's amazing. I love your desire to test natural dyeing techniques, and just the fact that it's from your grandmother's backyard. There's something really significant for that in me, in this respect for elders and intergenerational exchange. So I'm thrilled to see this work, and I would love to see, you know, the design as well, like manifested. I think it would be really beautiful and really simple, and you could keep playing with, you know, your timing to get all those gradients that you want. But as far as the seed concept goes, it's really compelling. So I really love that. And I would say, if you're interested in this, there's a book by Toronto-based artist called Make Ink. I don't know if we mentioned it in the Charrette last year, but he makes natural inks, but his partner also has a fashion house, and she uses them to dye fabrics. So, and they're all foraged in the Toronto area. And it has like how to find all of the natural dyes and how to process them. So if this is something you like, that could be a cool resource to look into.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. And I'm open the floor to anyone else who wants to give you feedback before you move on.
I was just going to say, I really colors of the walnut dye. It's such a beautiful color. It's a really, it's amazing, isn't it, how nature brings us these beautiful tones so naturally. Yeah, it's really, it's just very calming, actually, to look at it in a way. It's got a really calming sort of color. I was also going to say, I'm actually supervising a PhD student at the moment at Aalto University, and her whole project is on bio-costume and bio-color. And she's actually working in a bio-color lab at Aalto University. It's a research lab that basically focuses exactly on this, using like old techniques and kind of in a contemporary context. And she's also got her heritage is Same, so she has Indigenous heritage as well, that she's sort of looking at her Indigenous heritage and how she can also look at some of the ways in which natural dyeing was used as well by her ancestors. So I think this is really interesting in the case of Aalto, using sort of these traditional techniques, but also in this kind of contemporary lab context. I definitely think it is an area that is just going to grow across fashion and costume. So yeah, very watch this space. There's going to be some really great work coming out about this.
Awesome, thank you. I think I'm going to move on to the next one, which was Fukoff, which was kind of about two crows kind of scavenging, and they were kind of discussing what food they're scavenging, and kind of at the end they kind of fly off. And there was this kind of like tragedy and comedy in it that I found, that like for some people, scavenge is how they like to scavenge to survive, and others just do it to do it. So I wanted to kind of like keep, and they're two crows, I don't know if I mentioned that, but I wanted to keep the kind of human quality to the crows. So, and in my head, when I was thinking of it, kind of like Cirque du Soleil, like on a tight wire, to be like birds on a wire, like a rope. So I wanted to do something in that direction. So for this, I also did a textile kind of sample, and I used like my offcuts from other projects, and I kind of stitched them together to kind of make feathers, to give the illusion of feathers. Yeah, so it would be like kind of like a bodysuit, and then it'd have this, the textile waist kind of put on it, and there would be like some feather like crown pieces just to bring home the idea of the crows a little further. And then I have a bigger image of the textile sample, which was all offcuts from like past shows that I've done. And then I have it here. So it does have some like movement to it, but yeah. So that's that seed concept.
So pretty.
It's beautiful. I love this idea too, because you can use black fabrics, but then you can also dye to make it all black. And so it's a really good way to use scraps with this costume. And like the technique you've used there, the geometry of it is really beautiful. Did you cut them all specifically?
They were like, so some of them were like, you know, when you cut like a circle and there's like the two triangle bits.
Yeah.
So it was like a lot of those pieces. So I just kind of fished through all of my waste, like my textile waste, to find pieces like that to keep it kind of symmetric.
Very nice.
And did you sew them together, or did you use any adhesive?
They're just hand stitched together.
Very cool.
So it's on like a black backing and it's just hand stitched.
Love it.
I love the movement of it. I think it's so fun to think about what that would look like on a performer in that space, in that way. I just think it has so much life to it, and it does exactly what you're saying about like that sort of like comedy tragedy mix, right? Like there's something like funny and compelling and also like deeply like emotional about it. So yeah, this is fantastic.
Thank you.
I think it's gorgeous. I love the texture, and I think sometimes there's this assumption that if you're going to do eco, it's not going to create a high quality aesthetic. That's always one of the fears around eco-sonography and sustainable design. But I think you showcase here already how beautiful and plush and sophisticated you can be with textile waste. It's that's not an issue at all. You know, I'm always trying to debunk that theory. That, you know, using waste materials can't create a high quality result. So it's lovely to see these kind of examples.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Okay.
I have one more.
Lucky us.
Astrid, do you want to say something before he moves on?
I was just going to say that I love the fact that it doesn't emulate feathers, you know, it doesn't try to look like feathers, but it has that sort of a feeling of birds. I think you've really nailed it well, Andrew, with that texture. I love it.
Thank you. So my final seed concept, it does have a bad word on it. So I just want to give everyone a heads up. It's for mentoring session number 4, which is about the history of the F word and kind of its the different meanings it had to it and kind of the reclamation of it for the LGBTQ community. So basically the play is about 2 people kind of just talking about its different meanings and then kind of what it means in the future. And the plays takes place 90 years in the future. And they're talking about how it's evolved and how like things have changed in society. And it was, the author put like a link to a podcast that kind of inspired it. So the podcast was all about just kind of like linguistics and how the word has evolved and how for some people it isn't like some people don't believe it as a slur word anymore and they've kind of reclaimed it, and other people think it like should have no there should be no reclamation tied to it and it should just be like eliminated from people's language. So I thought that was very interesting. So I went with this idea of, I was thinking like, because it takes place in the future, like what would be a future where something could be seen that would tie into this. So I kind of thought about how like museums have like art that's been saved and like people look at it and they have all these like kind of like there's dedicated like things to like funding art and like what's the word, like conserving it and like retouching it up and stuff. So I kind of thought with this idea that in the future, they would be in a museum looking at a piece of graffiti from nowadays that's been kind of preserved and is in the museum, and it's about the history of the word. So here we have it as like kind of like the sticks, how it originally meant like a bundle of sticks, and then how in like the UK it's used as a cigarette. And then at one point it was used to describe women, and it was so that's kind of where people think it went from there then to like gay men as a slur word, like that was kind of the link. And then here it's like the rainbow is like its connotation to the LGBT community, and it's kind of its use as like a slur as well as its reclamation. And then for the background, I wanted to go with like Keith Haring inspired art. So I wanted to do like an homage to that. So I kind of did a more angular like line doodle, and then kind of to represent like two people having a conversation, like how it is in the play. And then this is the kind of history of the word as a piece of graffiti, and they're looking at it as like kind of like a history lesson, and they're talking about it in the museum. So yeah, that's all for me.
I think this could also work in the context of the play. They say in the stage directions that it could be a digital art piece. I think they said that, so you could definitely use this in a way that could be interesting in digital theater too. And I like that you've created a visual backdrop, or whatever you want to call it, for the associations of the word, which is going to be alarming for people, but then when they move through the piece and listen to the story, they can have a new impression or understanding. And I think that's a really good metaphor for the experience of dealing with climate change. At first, it's very off-putting. It feels like you're outside it and you can't enter into the work or really understand how it affects you. But if you take the time to kind of go through an experience like this, you can feel, you know, like you have a role to play or some sort of relationship with it. I also think aesthetically, this is kind of interesting in the stage directions. They said it was sort of like a cowboy bebop aesthetic, and I can totally see this fitting into that aesthetic world as the playwright asked. So I think it's a really good expression of that piece.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just love the idea of graffiti art. I mean, not that we don't see it today, but graffiti art living in a museum, or, you know, graffiti slurs, like some like offensive tag living in a museum. That I just think that's really cool. And like, if you were to do this live, like you could get really creative in terms of what waste material you could use. Like, I'm literally thinking like someone threw out a chunk of wall and it's been sitting on the curb here, and I'm like, well, that could be where the graffiti was. And like, it seems like an opportunity to use like waste, and like putting something like that into a museum setting, I think is really, really interesting provocation.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
Thank
I was just going to
you.
say, one of the things that it reminded me of, because I don't know the play, is one of these things that I think is really important for eco-sonography and sustainable design, is understanding that everything that we do is intersectional, right? So I think where there's used to be this assumption, which I hope is now changing, that you could only be really passionate about one issue. You know, it was either you're like passionate about, you know, queer issues or social issues, or you know, sustainability, and you have to kind of have one thing that you move on the agenda of, and there's also this assumption that sustainable design doesn't include those social issues. And I think one of the things that I've been really conscious of is, how does eco-sonography intersect with everything else that is going on? You know, how does it intersect with the COVID crisis? How does it intersect with LGBTI plus issues? How does it intersect with, inclusive design, universal access, people with disabilities, you know, that sort of stuff. people of color, Indigenous issues, all of that stuff has to be part of our conversation. You know, it's not sustainable environmental issues over there and social issues over here. It is all interrelated. So it's really, and I really love that piece because it actually speaks to, you know, multiple things that are going on. So I think that's just always something that I'm trying to advocate for moving forward, because from my background as an eco-sonographer, I mean, I've been equally passionate about social and environmental issues for as long as I can remember. It's never been one over the other. I'm equally as passionate about the social issues. So for me, it's really important that it is about the social ecological. It's not just about, and I think there's this thing around wording that we talk about environmental or sustainability, and that kind of sometimes that separates us from those other social things that are going on in our world.
Hello. May I add something to that, Tanya? It's been interesting for me to work in the electronic waste recycling center, because it's a social enterprise that is it's a center for homeless people, people retired that they feel lonely and they want to make friends. Disabled people, people with all sorts of issues that they don't have where to go, they go there. So and I found that these recycling centers are actually centers to gather people and how can I say it? Give them an opportunity to enjoy life, making friends and doing very interesting things. But what I found is that the creative aspect is missing. They recycle all these products, and when I talk to them, because that's one of my missions, see what they think about recycling, they don't feel as good as we feel recycling. They feel that it's a tedious job, and they don't understand the meaning of it. They just go do the job, and I think from the educational point of view, is something that we should do about it. And part of my plan will be to add to this social component, add some creativity to make them feel better doing what they are doing. I don't know if you understand my point, but I don't know if I'm explaining properly.
Yes, you definitely did explain well, but it is such a huge challenge to, like, you know, do that type of labor and connect meaning to it when it's such a almost detached, like, part of a larger, you know, good or a larger system. So I think what you want to achieve there, like adding creativity, like adding meaning, adding motivation, is really admirable, but like what a wicked challenge. So I'm glad you're working on it, but I'm sure that it's going to be really challenging, and I'm really interested to see what you end up working on.
And I think that, like, maybe that's one of the powers of these plays, is that they're trying to connect the work you're doing with a creative, you know, connection and community building aspect. So maybe there's a way that this work, or work like this, can be the bridge for the people that you're working with and the community that you're building, to bring that intersectional element into your work. Mm-hmm. So I know Ian would love the plays to be applied in many other situations. So if there's any connection to the work in these plays to the work you're doing at the center, that could be an exciting way to consider making that connection. John, did you have something you wanted to share with us?
Yeah, I can share some ideas I have for Helen's Hangout.
Amazing.
So I worked on Patty Flather's play Helen's Hangout. This is a place set a good maybe 2 decades in the future, and shows a community coming together after a success of application of lots of Green New Deal principles, building affordable housing, producing sustainable energy, working with geothermal and wind power and solar power, and applying that to the new housing. And I started off with this picture of Tent City in Whitehorse, Yukon, where the play takes place. And Helen refers to a political figure, Helen Hollywood, who started tent protests in 2011. And those of you who are Canadian can correct me on this. I think this is the Yukon Legislative building in Whitehorse that the city was put out in front of. I know other coast, right, other side of the country. But that reference seems important because the protests were about unaffordable housing, not just amongst the Yukon First Nations people, but the area in general, as Whitehorse became more, in some ways, gentrified and touristy. For me, the thematic resonances in the play were this community gathering to celebrate. And really, she writes a cross-section of characters that have a lot of flexibility to them. She says that they can be Yukon's first peoples and a diverse settler population, and you can kind of define the characters as you see fit. But these people come together for a common purpose. And there's this whole idea that difference comes together for a common purpose, different groups of people, different communities. And there's a character named Bert who they're coming together and for the community and presenting a kind of musical performance to celebrate the success of this new community that's been built to provide affordable housing to the citizens. But Bert puts together this musical contraption that is built out of found resources, very unusual found resources, from tin cans to waffle irons to his ex's vibrator. All of these come together to make music. The idea of difference coming together for a common purpose, the idea of energy and sustenance coming from the earth and the sun and air and water. There's a recurring idea of hope that is built on engagement and commitment to each other as humans. And there's lots of symbolism of drum beats, songs, and cacophony. That is it cacophony or is it music? And when does it change from one to the other? They build an expectation that Bert's music is going to be awful, but we don't know if it is or not, because it doesn't say that in the script, right? That it suddenly is beautiful. It connected to me from where I am presently in Oxford, Ohio, in the US, which is a traditional homeland of the Miami and Shawnee and Osage people. And the land that I'm on was ceded to the US government by treaty in 1795. And the forced relocation of the Miami people really did open up the area to settlement. So we're primarily a community, we're primarily a settler community. But in terms of a socioeconomic resonance with where I am, we also have a huge income disparity in the present. And there's a lack of affordable housing in our area for low income workers and for seniors. And there's a real lack of entry level and sustainable wage jobs, and a very slow, the people who could probably benefit most with the sustainable wage jobs are the people who are most resistant to deploying green resources and rethinking creating green jobs. So I think that this play, if I were doing it here, would best be done on site. So my site location is a spot that the community would know that is a center of community pride. It's near a historic black covered bridge from early settler days. It's next to a creek, it's next to water, and it's on a community trail that was just built a few years ago, and that's in the process of looping around and connecting the community as a whole, all parts of the community together. So it's on a part of that near this historic site. I'm also intrigued by the idea of music making in the show, and music perhaps put together in ways the way that Bert's orchestra is motivated by nature. I did some exploration of rain chains, musical. I can't read behind the Zoom window here. I can't make that go away. Anyhow, different things that make music with nature, and this idea of these drain pipes. I don't know if you've seen this this video of the drain pipes that make music as the rain filters through them, or on the right there, a music box powered by water, and then the bottom, the idea of a wind harp, a musical instrument that's powered by the wind. So my creative exploration kind of took me to putting some dimensional pieces together and making this dimensional environment, and I can show it to you kind of live here. I was trying to have fun with this because it also is put together to make music with found objects and rubber bands that can play songs, and little things that I can hit and chimes and make music with physically. So that was just bringing me happiness and joy, and to build a structure that gave me that outcome. So I really started thinking about how this play could connect community. It's near two sources of community pride. It could be an opportunity to invite all of the participants to come and make music together. And that music making is part of this gathering to see this play. It's because the themes of the play also promote support for housing equity. It could be used to engage in discussions about that and to advocate for Green New Deal initiatives that we could really use in town, if not just for the benefits of that, but for job creation. So this is kind of the site that I would choose, and it's backed by that bridge. And this is a structure that I would add that was pretty much a simple stage with elements of instrument that could be active, that could perhaps stay up after the production to let people come and just listen to these nature-powered instruments make music. I think it would also be cool to have different stations around this where people could come and interact. It would be kind of, I don't know if anyone's done a Meow Wolf experience where they have electronic things that you touch and make music, but this could be the idea of natural things that don't require energy other than human interaction to make sounds. I would want to disrupt the site, the natural site, as little as possible, keep the space accessible, keep performing the daylight, to not have to provide power, and possible resources. There's the stack of railroad ties that's sitting next to the road on the way to this site that I found. And at the site itself, some used fence posts and fencing material that I thought could make a nice kind of set of chimes inside of that's kind of what this guy over here on the far left was, maybe a set of chimes that was made by those fence posts. So that's kind of what inspired me through this play to think about how the themes apply to my own community and how it could help instigate change here.
God, it sounds like you have a funding pitch ready to go. That's amazing. I love it. Yeah, it's so beautiful. And just like the thought of that sculpture, that musical sculpture staying after the performance and being a place for community to connect with the site, it's really beautiful. And so, yeah, it's just such a wonderful gift you've proposed here with your seed concept. So yeah, and the joy that you brought me by playing with your little sculpture there, just, I wish I hadn't been on mute because I was just giggling over here. It's so amazing. Thank you for that.
I also love that what you created could become a stage for tons of other kinds of performance, like public performance, and just like opens up so much potential as a community space.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow all your build materials were right there. That's quite amazing. Just waiting for you.
Really love also.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I really love also like how you've thought about accessibility, both for performance and for the future, and making sure that everyone is welcome and has access. And I think that like layered with all these like community connections and the thought that how you chose the space was because it was so important to the community in all these different ways. And I really, really love it. I love the way that you're thinking about this, and it's really exciting.
Thank you.
I love the focus on sound and reclaimed materials, and that you're using site-based materials and you're responding to issues that are happening in your own community, very place-based. I do agree with Michelle that you could totally go for a grant if you wanted to, if there are things available to do something like this. This seems very achievable, even with your students at the university, to do something with the community.
Thanks. I'll look into it.
And I will copy some of your ideas, Jen, if you allow me, because this is exactly what I was talking about making connections and making what people do more meaningful. It's great.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that was so exciting. Oh, I love seeing all of your work. I'm not sure if anybody else from the Charrette had anything to share or discuss. And if not, we can move on to our shared art piece together. We're good to go.
Let's move on.
Michelle, can we have a 2-minute break?
Oh my gosh.
Let's have a bio break. Let's take 5.
We'll take 5, yeah.
Yeah.
What time?
By the way, is this where we get our food and so we organize ourselves? Yeah.
Exactly. So let's take a 10-minute break.
Sure.
So we'll come back at like 7:26, and we're going to read Lifeday together, which we sent in the email. So if you can prepare something living, a plant or a pet, something recycled, eco-friendly, we're going to put it in the chat.
I'm going to put, this is the link to Lifeday, and I'll put the prompts
right here.
Yeah, the prompts are right at the top of the play.
So something living, a plant and a pet, something recycled, eco-friendly, or zero waste, something to write on, something to write with, and something sweet. And we'll come back at 7:26 and we'll share that as our salutations. Thank you. This is the introduction to Lifeday by Jessica Huang. I'm continually inspired by Project Drawdown, the most comprehensive plan ever proposed to reverse global warming, edited by Paul Hawken, especially Hawken's beautiful quote from the introduction. The buildup of greenhouse gases we experience today occurred in the absence of human understanding. Our ancestors were innocent of the damage they were doing. That can tempt us to believe that global warming is something that is happening to us, that we are victims of a fate that was determined by actions that precede us. If we change the preposition and consider that global warming is happening for us, an atmospheric transformation that inspires us to change and reimagine everything we make and do, we begin to live in a different world. We take 100% responsibility and stop blaming others. We see global warming not as an inevitability, but as an invitation to build, innovate, and affect change, a pathway that awakens creativity, compassion, and genius. There is one cast member, Auntie, non-white, and aged. In this case, we will all be playing Auntie when we feel so compelled. We will summon her spirit. Auntie has gathered us for Lifeday. It is possible she has gathered us in person, and also possible that we have been gathered on a streaming platform, as we are. It doesn't matter. We are gathered just the same. Before the play begins, there are a few items that the audience should have accessible, which hopefully we do. Something living, a plant or pet, something recycled or eco-friendly or zero waste, something to write on, something to write with, and something sweet. Do you want to start us off?
Sure. Is everyone here? Yes, I can see you. Can you see me? Baby girl, put that down. We'll get to our sweets in a second. Does everyone have what they need? Well, go on and get them. No, go on, I'll wait. Huh? Junior, we do this every year. Can anyone tell him? Anyone? No, wait, come back. We celebrate Lifeday on December 16th every year. Sweet potato, you even said it's your favorite holiday. Can you tell me why? Can anyone tell me why?
You can go get them in a second. I'll tell you when. No, listen.
Though it might be hard to believe, we didn't always have what we have now. Don't roll your eyes, baby girl, listen. There was a time when we heated our homes with natural gas and cooked our food and our bodies with hydrofluorocarbons. The fuel we used to get from point A to B, petroleum. Laugh if you want to. I was there, I saw it, I did it. Well, we couldn't help it, Junior. It was back then. There was a time when even if you did everything you could possibly think of, you used green cleaning products and recycled your gray water, you were still giving your liquids and single-use plastic, and oil companies got more tax breaks than teachers.
And of course, there was convenience. What is to be done? I wrung my hands and ordered takeout. The world is set up for me to fail. 6 days out of the week, I ordered from Amazon.com, and then on the 7th day, I called my college and asked them to divest from fossil fuels. This was good, decidedly so, because capitalism is motivating, and because through hard work and privilege, I had found a way to eke out some power. I had a college to call, stocks of my own to divest, access to the articles that told me I should, and the power to choose. But your ama had nothing but ritual.
Yes, Alma, who started Lifeday, in her house, every dish was washed without waste. Every meal eaten was savored. She watered the plants in the morning and composted her food waste in the evening. Ate vegan and local and homegrown. And even though it wasn't convenient, it also didn't decrease the heat or lower the oceans or change the carbon count either. All that it did was change her. And it changed Alma totally.
Which is why we still celebrate Lifeday, even now, even after aquaculture and the high-speed trains and 100% renewable energy and carbon captured and sequestered and dead zones repopulated and green refrigeration and family planning for all, we celebrate.
Because without celebrating, we forget. We say the government should, and we grill a steak. We say our children will, as we vote for war instead. Amma changed her life in order to pull life to the center, and now we do too. So we always remember, Okay. Now, Junior, and anyone else who needs to, go get something living, a plant, a cat. No, I'll wait. Now hold that life gently, sweet potato, and say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go on, say it. Thank you for reminding me that I am not the only species that matters. Thank you for helping me practice taking care.
Now gather your reusable sponge, your upcycling bag, your vegan dinner, hold it with love and appreciation. Say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for helping me keep this fight center in my mind and in my pocketbook. And write an intention, a new commitment you will take no matter how small.
No matter how many important articles say it will be too ineffective, this isn't for them. It's for you to mark your devotion, your conviction, your care. So centering so that when given a choice, you will remember not to hesitate. When given a vote, you will know what to do. Write it down.
Read it again. And to seal it in, that's right, baby girl. It's finally time, after you've written it down, to eat something sweet. Savor this pleasure. Know your enjoyment. See? See, my beloved ones? This is what it means to be present in life. Cheers, everyone. Thank you for doing that with us.
What's everybody eating?
Yeah.
Strawberry tarts.
Oh, that looks amazing.
Thank you.
Apple crumble, look.
I have a little caramel.
Ooh.
I'm having dark chocolate.
Oh, yeah.
Dark chocolate, fair traded chocolate.
Perfect.
Sustainable fair traded chocolate. They say, they claim.
Mine's a chocolatey, coconutty vegan treat. It's really nice.
What are you having, Andrew?
I had a champagne chocolate like bottle thing.
Ooh.
A shot of
Wow.
alcohol to celebrate.
Yes, I've got some wine here as
Celebration.
well.
I've got wine too. Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.
I've got a chai tea. It's a bit too early to drink for me, but it's a chai tea. Yeah.
John, what do you have to celebrate?
I've got a little wheat wine.
Uh-oh, you cut out. We couldn't hear you. You're frozen. Uh-oh. You're back, I think.
Claudia, do you have your strudel?
No,
No.
I don't. I will make it. I was trying with the photos. I was trying to encourage someone to tell me, "Oh, I want to go and help you, so I can learn to make it." Because it's I got an apple strudel family recipe that has been in my family for 200 years, but it's interesting. One little thing, no one in my whole family wants to learn to do it. So I am the second last resource. The first one is my mom that taught me. So my great-grandmother taught my grandmother. My grandmother didn't want to learn, so he passed the recipe and never did it again to my mom. My mom passed it to me. I love it. We love it. But my sister not interested. My brother is not interested. So I'm looking forward to find someone that wants to learn to do it. So we keep the recipe alive, and it's different than any other apple strudel that I've seen in different cities and restaurants, and it's totally different because it's made with the little apple squares, which when you roll it, it gets a lot of air inside. It's not like a chunk of paste and mashed apple and pastry. It's actually a lot of air and a bit crunchy. It's really nice. So if anyone interested.
Claudia, I'm definitely interested because I try to go to Austria to see my family when I can, and strudels are on my list of the most important things to do when I arrive, is have the Austrian strudels.
All right, so we make
so many varieties of strudels that you can have. Like it's my part of. I feel like it's part of my Austrian heritage to be able to make a strudel.
So we make a date and we do it. I'll show you the way I do it, and then have you done it before?
I haven't. No, my sister makes strudels, but to be honest, we've been struggling to make the strudels in Australia because the Austrian ingredients are really different, and you can't buy them in Australia as much.
All right.
That was so delicious.
Yeah, I definitely savored that.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us. I think like the next steps for us will be contacting you and making sure we get everything together for the exhibition, which is until the summer, so we got lots of time. And we've just been so thrilled to share this like larger community gathering this time around. It's really expanded our world and our network, and it's been such a pleasure to meet all of you and get to know you and share your brilliance in this creative fight for a future. And it's just been such a joy. And I would say also that this would be a great time for Tanya to make sure that everybody here knows that the reading group will continue in the new year. So that's a good opportunity for us all to stay in touch and keep building this network and sharing these resources. So if you're not already plugged into Tanya's networks for the reading group, please be sure that you do stay in touch with us that way, because it's such a good opportunity to keep this work going until the next Charrette in 2 years' time.
Yeah, I was just thanks so much, Alex and Michelle. And it's been a great honor to have this global learning network, not just we've got 3 universities that are connected through this global learning network, but also to have the professionals, which is you guys, that has just lifted everything for us as well, just to have that connection with professional designers. So that's awesome. And with the Ecosnography Reading Group, we had 3, formal events. They were quite, extensive in terms of the setup, because we did a blended setup where it was, in a theatre with a small live audience and online. And that was really hard actually to do technically. But what I want to do now is actually we have these 3 events, and now I want to move into a situation that's going to look a little bit more like this, where we can see each other, where we can have conversations like this and more of that sharing. So that's where I'm moving to. So this kind of format, I think, is going to work well. And, it's going to be set up so that if you have time and you can come, that's great. And there's no obligation. But what I wanted to say, the whole idea of the reading group is to get us reading a bit more. because I find that I don't read enough. I really feel like I want to read more and engage more with different kinds of ways of thinking that are related to eco-sonography. It's not about reading about eco-sonography or sustainable design necessarily. It's about reading texts that kind of provoke us to maybe think in an ecological way. And the whole idea is it should be fun, something to read that we enjoy. And it doesn't have to always be something arduous or a really long book, right? It could be a chapter of a book even. So not that it becomes something that, oh my God, I've got to finish the book. But summer, for us in Australia, summer is here. Summer reading is going to be a thing. I know most of us are going into that holiday period in some form, so that if you want to do some reading over that winter break, this is a good time. And then we'll probably have the first eco-sonography reading group informal in February, I think. Perfect. So, and if Michelle and Alex have your email addresses, then perhaps they can send a link so that you know when it's on.
Yes, we definitely will.
And we'll probably, just while their charrette is finishing up, we'll keep with a similar timeframe to this, because we've got the Canadian-Australian connection.
Yeah.
But as we're moving forward, we'll probably change up a little bit, because we've definitely got some people in Europe that haven't been able to attend, for example, because of the time frame. So we'll probably mix up time frames. But what I wanted to ask was, are there any, while we're here right now, are there any books, articles, anything that you've been reading or would like to read? Because now is the time to talk about it, because I'm just actually thinking I really need to select something to read. And it's almost too large to think about this right now.
Well, so, you know what? I was prepared for this question. So
yay.
I had a feeling that we would want to talk about at least some, things that we've come across. So I just finished a book that I would love to discuss with you all, because it's not specifically about eco-sonography, but I've been listening to it as an audiobook, and I keep thinking about what we've been doing together. So I'm just going to get the exact title for you.
Awesome.
So that it's not me misquoting things like I tend to do, as Michelle knows. So it's true. I say things with complete conviction, and it's just a little bit off. So the title is in fact called The Enchanted Life: Unlocking the Magic of the Everyday. And the author is Sharon Blackie, and I can write it in the chat. But it's been a really interesting intersectional study of, she's a psychologist, but she's talking about the collective consciousness and community engagement and a connection to the land and to the non-human inhabitants of that land as being a really key factor in us connecting to each other, to the world, and having a beautiful future from a lot of different angles. And she does talk about theater and art in a few chapters. So I'll put that in the chat as a point.
That sounds like a really good one to read over the holiday break, actually, where we're moving into a new year.
Yeah.
And really reflecting on what we want to happen in the new year ahead. And many of us might be going through some different changes around that, and reassessing ourselves and where we're going in our lives. So I would be quite keen on that one. I'll have a look at it. I mean, this is one that I imagine you could read as an ebook.
There's a really good audiobook. That I highly recommend in terms of the reader's really great. So it's a good audiobook, but also it's a good, easy read.
And do you know how long it is?
I think it's a couple hundred pages, but it's not a small font.
Yeah. Okay, great.
And I'd be happy, Tanya, if you want to chat once you get a chance to go through it about chapters in particular, if we want to narrow it down in advance of the first reading group. But it really, it made me think of you all and our time together and the work we're doing in sort of a macro context of consciousness shifting. So
right. I'm happy to do that one in Feb. I'm very happy to do that as an option. Great. Well, we've definitely got, that sounds like a good option for February. And maybe Alex, you and I can have a chat about some questions we want to provoke as part of that discussion.
I love that.
Anybody else have anything that they've read in the last year or so that they think would be interesting? Astrid.
I do. A book that I just finished. In fact, I read it twice because I was in lockdown. And so I was totally isolated. And so I reread it. But what's wonderful, it's called Permanent Astonishment. It's a memoir by Tomson Hayhoe, who is probably our most renowned Indigenous playwright. And it's such fun to read. But the meaning of sustainability and how the Indigenous culture have so much to teach us. I thought of myself as relatively aware, but boy, when you read it goes through his life from birth until he's 7 or 8 years old, I think. No, I guess until he's about 14. He's ready to go through high school. But he's so funny. He has the best sense of humor, the best descriptions of how his family lived and worked on the land in all kinds of climate, food, the use and the use of natural foods. I mean, it gives you a whole different perspective on what hunting means and what fishing means, and how much we have to learn. It's great. And on top of that, of course, he's a fantastic, wonderful playwright and a really incredible musician. He's the classical and jazz pianist, so he's multi-talented. But the reason I recommend it is because it's one of those books where you learn a whole lot, but it's so much fun reading it that you're not even realizing that you're really learning it. So by the time I got to the end, I was ready to read it again, which doesn't happen to me very often. So I highly recommend it.
I don't know if I always think that I sound a bit disconnected when everyone is saying, but it's got a connection. That's why it sounds on me. And by reading all these plays, I've noticed that how hard it is for writers to talk about the skin color of the people. And even in this one, it says something like non-color person or something like that. And it resonates a video that I watched a few months ago that it was really interesting. I don't know if anyone wants to watch it. It's a lady talking about skin colors and how hard it is to mention them. It's a project. It calls Humanize. I don't know if you heard about it.
Do you want to type it in the chat, Claudia?
Yeah, I got the link there.
Perfect.
It was I used it at school to talk about stereotypes and discrimination and races, and yeah, a lot of things. It was very useful, and every time I read one of these plays, it comes to my mind. So I would love to share it.
Great, thank you. I think the other thing about, I suppose, the reading group can also be, it can also be a podcast potentially, or a film. That is also an option. Yeah. If there's a film that we saw that we think is interesting, we can talk about that too.
Yeah, I think that's related to circulation at the end of the day. Everything we do, if we make it happen outside the place, outside our personal lives, that's circulation about, isn't it?
There's a podcast that I recently started listening to that I'm really enjoying called Conscient podcast by Claude Schryer, who is, I believe, he's a Canadian writer, and he thinks a lot about how, like, you know, climate change and the arts and ecology, and how he can create positive change through arts. But he does the podcast sort of one half in English and one half in French. So it's kind of uniquely Canadian in that way, where he'll sort of organically switch back and forth, or one episode will be primarily French, one will primarily be English. But he does some interviews with, you know, Canadian theater artists, but also just really sort of a different tone for a podcast. I would say there's nothing like hyped about it. It's just really, really thoughtful. So I'd recommend that quite highly. I'll
Throw it in the
pop that
chat.
Anyone else got anything that they want to recommend, even just to recommend over the break, if you've got a good podcast that you love listening to, or a film that you've been, have you seen lately?
I have the book I mentioned to you, Tanya, that I was reading by a British psychologist. It's called The Well-Gardened Mind, and it's about the benefits of gardening on our health and well-being, and on mental health as well as physical health. So I'll put that one in as well. But I'm finding it really, I'm only about a third through, but I'm finding it really interesting as well.
Great. I'm just thinking about, and I've just had a mental block of the book, but it's by, let me just go and get the book. Go and get the book.
I'm trying to think if there's
sort of tying that together with what you were doing earlier, Andrew. I've been doing a lot of reading of books that are about growing your own dye garden. So like gardening with, and like finding the natural dyes that will grow well, and like culturing them and like nurturing them, and dyeing with those locally. So I like to do natural dyeing also. So yeah, it's a nice little crossover. There's one that's called like A Garden to Die For, but of course it's DYE. So yeah, it's fun.
Has anybody seen this? Has anybody read this?
Yeah.
It's actually obviously mirrored, but Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer is another one that I would love to discuss because it's so beautiful. Has anyone read it?
Yes.
Yeah. It's a really beautiful book and is very, very integrated with ecological thinking from an Indigenous perspective. That was one. And I think one that you might have mentioned, Michelle, was The Fix Up. Is that one with Sandra Goldmark's book? Has anybody?
I mentioned that a while ago. Yeah, that's the New York theater designer with the fix shops. Yeah, I love that book. That's another good one.
I actually know Sandra personally, so I'm just thinking that might be a good one if we at some point we read that, because we can get Sandra to come in and have a chat about her book.
Amazing.
I can't say I can do that with all the authors.
No.
But yes.
I'll put that one in the chat. It's called The Fix Up or Fix. What is it called? Fix Shop.
I think it's
called Fixation. Fixation.
Oh,
how to have stuff
Fixation.
without breaking the planet. Yeah.
That's
I'll
it,
put it in the chat. I have it
organization.
right here.
Okay.
Yeah.
That for us. I'm notorious, as I said, for reading a book and not remembering the title or the author.
Also, Katharine Hayhoe is her book. I don't know if anybody's read. She just came out. She's a climate scientist. And she just came out with a book about how we find like hope and excitement about the future through climate change, which is really interesting. I'll look up the title. I just bought it, but I haven't read it yet.
Great. This is awesome. That's great to have this, there's enough reading to get us through the year, really, just in that list alone. Yeah.
I'll just throw my hat in the ring as well, because I can park the car now.
Awesome.
I'm not doing much reading because I've got a very a busy holiday period. But I went to the Matisse exhibition recently, and I bought Julia Cameron's recently updated Artist's Way and Walking the Way. And I've got about 6 friends who have already said that they want to reinvigorate their practice and do the workbook with me. I did it 20 years ago with a whole bunch of people, you know, and we thought it was time to do it again, you know, and to reinvigorate our practice with new thinking and where we want to take our work and our practice now.
I actually just bought the workbook because it's been almost 20 years since I've done it, and I was wanting to do it also. So I just bought the workbook. Yeah.
Is that a new one, Imogen? Is this like an that's just come out?
Well, I think so, yes, because I bought it at the art gallery shop just last week.
Oh, cool. Okay, that could be a nice one as well. Gosh, we've got lots of, it's almost too much. No, it's not too much. So it'd be great. I mean, and so what I might do is start actually make a decision soon. I think what we'll do, Michelle, is actually work on the book that you suggested, and as a first one.
Alex,
Me?
the book? Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Alex suggested. And The Enchanted Life. I think that one sounds like a good one for the holiday period.
Great.
And it sounds like the audio book is great. So if people, you know, are driving across the holiday to visit family, then, you know, audio books are something that you can do if you don't have time to sit down and read, you know, in the old way, I suppose. And so maybe, Alex, you and I will have a chat about setting a date.
Sure. And I can also, I have the book at home and I can maybe highlight some chapters in particular in advance if you don't have time to get through the whole book. So I can do that as well, and I'll email it around. And if you're in Toronto, the Toronto Public Library has free audiobooks through Libby, which is an app that you can get on your phone, and they have it on there. So if you're Toronto, that's an easy fix. But yeah, we'll be in touch, and then I'll get in touch with everyone, and we'll create a mailing list that continues this forever and ever and always.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Alex and Michelle, for hosting. And yeah, what a great way to end the year. Yeah, really appreciate. I really loved doing that reading.
Thank you all so much for being here.
Yes.
This was wonderful.
Thank you for joining us, and we'll keep seeing your wonderful faces through the new year and be in touch about the exhibition.
Yeah, and keep us posted on what you're up to. We want to know what your projects are. So always feel free to email.
Bye.
Bye.
Adios. Merry Christmas. Feliz Navidad.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Bye.